Oh, so when's the last time you did something great for yourself? When's the last time you remember that even though you're super successful, you really set a firm line in the sand? And so you kind of know the things you need to do, but maybe you struggle to set a boundary, speak your truth. Any of those things sound familiar? Anyone else been there? Just me? Just me all by myself? Well, if any of that makes sense to you, hang with me today. I am Jennifer Zenz Olson, founder and owner of Laughing Lotus Wellness. I'm a transformational purpose coach and expert. And what I do is work with really beautifully successful women who got to a place in their lives where they were like, is this it? Is this all there is? And they're definitely feeling like they need to do something different, right? And so they need some clarity. And so that's what we work together to do is get that clarity for that woman about how she got where she is, where she wants to go, how we're going to do that using my unique coaching blend of all of my very favorite healing modalities and certifications, combined with and backed with, maybe that's a better way to say, my 20 years of clinical social work experience providing psychotherapy in an office. So I'm a 3-time business owner, super passionate about entrepreneurship, love all those things. But that's just a little bit about who I am, where I'm coming from, and what we want to talk about today, which just feels like fire to me. I'm like running late today, so I'm like, so I'll try to. Okay, nothing was going right. That was the kind of morning I was having. And so what we're going to talk about today are creating acts of self-love. And so this is just like one of those things that is always in my heart. So I will warn you in advance, put your seatbelts on. Okay. So what I want to talk about is in this month, we've been talking about creating things, right? So it's that collective resource for expanding action to evolve. So we want to imagine, you hear me a lot say action, 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 action. Okay. And is despite the fact that that might be horribly annoying, you will probably likely not forget it because I say it so often. But what I will talk about today, creating acts of self-love is so powerful and profound because it's truly acts of honoring yourself. So I want us to talk about today. So I did a vlog on Tuesday. Feel free to go catch that, where I talk about kind of 3 points around acts of self-love for the collective, which is something I'm really passionate about as well. It's why I created a membership. But I also today really want to get into the grittiness of this subject in a little bit different way. We'll see where it takes us. So first of all, my question to you, if you're joining me, is what's the most recent, like divinely guided, super beautiful act of self-love you've had for yourself? Would you be willing to post it? What I'd love to do is inspire all of the women who work with me, follow me, the people in our community to do this very same thing because it's so important. So what we're going to talk about today, here's some acts of self-love. Okay, so I don't want to just do the traditional, right? Here's the deal. Last year I talked about sweetness in February, right? I talked about like the traditional like self-love, self-care. I love all that. I love all that. I could preach about that for 9 hours in a stadium full of women if I needed to. But I wanted to do something just a little bit different. So it's going to be a little saucy today. So I'm going to warn you, like you're going to be like, okay. So what I want to think about is acts of self-love are strong lines for our conversation today. They're strong lines of holding honor for yourself. So I want you to think about this way. Saying no. Saying no. Saying yes. Okay, so we're going to get there. Saying yes. I'm going to write that down. Where's my pen? This is the day. Saying yes. Okay, so saying yes. Setting boundaries. I could talk about boundaries for 9 hours in a stadium. I don't know why I keep saying stadium full of women, but that's just maybe my vision. I don't know. But anyway, right, I could talk about that for 9 hours. Boundaries, 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 boundaries. Oh my God. Okay. Big deal. Big deal. Big act of self-love. Big deal. Okay. Know your worth. You got to know your worth. You got to know what you're bringing. You got to know the fire that you bring, the unique talents and gifts you have in the world. You have to see your worth. Okay. Taking time for rest and vacation. Also a boundary. Lots of these are going to feel like they weave together. So I want you to roll with me because they might sound a little bit like they're kind of like cut from the same cloth, if you will. But I really want you to like pull them all apart a little bit to really get specific and look at them individually just a little bit, because I want you to walk away with the ideas in your head. Does that make sense? Okay. Honoring your story. By God, an act of self-love is honoring your story. You went through all the things to get where you are today. Okay. And one of the common myths, and I talk about this quite a bit in podcasts and things when I'm a guest with people, one of the common myths is all that stuff I did before I landed into my purpose was a waste of time. Completely untrue. Every single thing you're going through in your story is preparing you for your purpose. So everything matters. Ironically, right? So this is what I want you to think about. Everything matters. Not none of it, all of it does. So it's a different way of reframing this notion that it doesn't matter because it does. Okay? Having a vision for yourself. So having a vision, having a vision. I am really lucky to be surrounded by really powerful women that have big visions for the world. I mean, big. These are women that want to change the world. And they don't mean it in an arrogant, haughty, like egotistical way. They want to pave and blaze trails for other people to come behind us. They want to create impact and legacy, right? So powerful. And so we really want to think about that. It's I want to have a vision. I always point here because that's your third eye. Like I automatically am like, have a vision. I'm not even looking your eyes, right? It's having that inner knowing and trusting your inner knowing. That's another one. I'm just taking notes as I talk. Trusting your inner knowing. I talk about this like incessantly with people. You know more than you think you do. We are wired with gut instinct. You'll hear people all the time. I have this gut feeling. I have this, sense of something. I feel it. You're going to hear language. And what that is that internal knowing that's super powerful. It's like one of your superpowers. And one of the things we can sometimes do is kind of forget to tap into it and really hone that skill. And so I want to tell you that is an act of self-love. Why? Because your internal knowing is always guiding you towards where you need to go and be. Okay. So if I get really good at listening to that, that's going to be one of my greatest assets as I do this journey for myself. Okay. And then surrounding yourself with yes people. And then I wrote that. I thought I was going to say yes and no people. Let me define this just a little bit. Okay. Yes and no people. What the heck does that mean? I have people around me that say both. Yes, you go do that. Okay. That's the people I'm talking about, really. So just roll with me for a minute. But my same loves in my life that will tell me yes and thumbs up on something will also go, if I go to do something or I'm having a bad feeling about it, they will hold up a stop sign for me and they'll be like, oh, wait a minute. That doesn't feel like what you wanted to do. That doesn't feel like what's in alignment for where you're going and what you want to achieve for your impact and legacy. So we really need to be surrounded with these incredible human beings that bring in the awareness of holding space for our vision, right? So this is really powerful. So they're yes and no people, but they're yes and no people because they're people that really know you, hold space for you, and want to help rise you up, right? That's what you're really looking for. Your people that help you rise. By that, I mean they're helping you reach into yourself to evolve. They see the vision and then they tuck in and support you by saying, yay, nay, like, hey, I love this. Hey, that feels wrong to me. Like, is that really where you want to go? And they're not telling you what to do. They're like a big, beautiful mirror. So they're holding up a mirror to you to say, is this in fact where you wanted to go? Is this in fact what you feel is best for your soul? That's the people you want to be surrounded by. So these are all acts of self-love. And I know that sounds so funny, but rather than talking about like taking a bath and taking a, like great, don't get me taking a hike, listening to music, right? I mean, amen. Amen. We need those things. This to me is the more profound way, and listen to me lean into this, to show up for yourself. I want you to show up for yourself. People may or may not show up for us. I hate to say this, right? You're not standing alone. I'm sure you've got great support. I'm sure you're surrounded by yes people and no people. I'm sure you're deeply loved. That's not what I'm saying. But I will say this, no one can make the decision for you. So it is so crucial that you lean into really taking such good care of yourself. So I want to ask you again. I asked at the beginning, I'm going to ask again. What recent big leap of self-love action have you taken? Today, I reached out to someone that I really hold in high regard, and I asked a kind of tough question about something that's going on. And it was hard for me. And I want to be really honest, right? That the old stories, right? This is where your stories count. You got to hold space for that. Like, will this be received well? What if they don't like me anymore? What if they don't respect me anymore? What if they think I'm being blankety blankety blank? Whatever the hell it is, right? We've all been there. And so I really had to sit with that And I had to listen to my heart because my heart was like, you have to say something. This is, if it's riding around with you, this is how we know we're really being asked to lean into something. And so, as an act of self love, I sent a message and I was conveying kind of what was weighing on my heart. And so, is it easy? No. So I'm going to tell you, here's what's not glorious about this, right? We would all love, right, me to throw confetti, pink and red, and right, it's almost Valentine's Day, and it's so beautiful, and it's the month of, love and whatever. And like, look at me, love and whatever. Like, I love that. I get down with that. I'm super excited for Valentine's Day. Got some fun things coming up. I'm super stoked about, right? So I love Valentine's Day, and I love all that energy. And there's something so much bigger at stake here when we're talking about self-action around your acts of self-love, because they're really saying, I have worth. I want you to really take this in for a second. And in your mind, I have worth. So when we have the hard conversations, when we say no, when we set boundaries, when we feel like we can step into a place to say, my story has paved this journey for me. There is something so powerful in what I'm doing and how I show up. That's really the version that I have around acts of self-love. So they're kind of big, and they can feel gigantic depending on how comfortable or uncomfortable we are. Saying no is really hard sometimes, right? Like, particularly if you're wired like I am, that I have big stories around what it means to back out of what I have as a perceived responsibility. All of us have these. What I love is watching women. I just recently had a woman reach out to me, and this is so beautiful. She was talking about the membership I just opened, and she wanted to join us, and she was a little bit concerned about her age. And so I just wrote back to her. And like, to me, a big act of self-love is trusting that instinct to lean in and go, age be damned. Age be damned. This feels like it's going to be a good thing for me. It feels like it'll be a good community for me. And I don't mean to make light of it, right? But these are great current examples. Like, I'm going through my head, like, where have I seen women do this? To saying, possibly an opportunity isn't the right fit. Right now, I've been really blessed with a lot of opportunities. So like, right, sometimes those are not going to be the right fit. So sometimes, despite the fact that I want to be a yes lady and I'm doing all these things and I love that, sometimes it might not be the right fit. Making room to say a no opens something to say a yes, right? So I want you to really think about this. An act of self-love is sometimes saying, I'm really sorry, discernment's my word for the year. That doesn't suit me, and I wish you well. Like, I never would say no to an opportunity, but then whatever, maybe another time. But right now, my soul's telling me I only have so much time in a day to do all the things, right? So I'm going to have to be discerning. And so those are the kinds of actions that I really want you to dive into. I really want you to be thinking about, how can I show up and love myself more? How can I see my worth? And then how can I create action attached to that worth? I have to be able to see the worth. So I do know that I'm going to lose some of you a little bit who might be listening, that you might be struggling with that still. Been there. Every woman that you know has been there. So I want to normalize that. Okay. And I'm going to tell you, it's a practice. So it took me 47 years to get to a space, right? So I always love saying these things because it's so real to me, of big acts of self-love and understanding my own worthiness. And it'll still bump into there, right? So I'm gonna share something just a little bit novel at the end of this, and I want you to take this with you. So one of the things that I'm going to be doing with the ladies in my membership in a couple of weeks, because we're right now this weekend, we've got Valentine's Day coming. I'm super excited. So Sunday's going to be a fun meditation, a little party to celebrate each other and our divine feminine, just connecting. So I'm super excited about that. But at the end of the month, we're going to be talking about the shadow. And I don't want to spend 8 hours, because again, here's another one I could talk about for 8 hours. Your shadow part of who you are is the parts that kind of are the struggle. They're the challenge. They're the conflict. They're the old stories that might write around for you. They're the triggers. They're the blocks. They're the things that don't feel as glorious, right? So you're like, wait a minute, Jen, we're almost to mid-February. You're talking about the things that are not glorious, and you're not just advocating for all this beautiful, lovey greatness. I am, by all means, on Valentine's Day, dole out the love, okay? But I want you to really think about, for me, when I think about the shadow self, and my women are really super excited about doing this work, even though it's challenging, is looking at all the parts of who you are. And the more clear, hear my word, the more clear I am about the hard parts, the challenging pieces, the aspects of myself that show up that don't feel as lovely, and we all have them. I have them as well. I want you to understand that those things are going to show up, and you can either be aware of them, work with them, or they can sort of bury us a little bit, right? So this is where they become really important, is as unglorious as it sounds. That's why we do this work, is because I want women to be able to say, I am worthy. I want you to be able to step into that space and understand that sometimes our feeling unworthy is really old shadow work that maybe we've never done. And it's just a way to talk about the blocks and the challenges. So don't get lost in the shuffle of that. It sounds very energetic, and it is, but it's actually really just the parts of ourselves that are kind of blocked and stuck. Maybe it was a time in our lives. I have a 17-year-old part of myself that I know she rides around with me all the time. That's a story for another day. But she's gonna rear her head. If I feel really cornered, I see her come up. Now, here's the problem. She's feisty. So, right. So it doesn't sound like a big deal, but if I open up my mouth and I give over to that part of my soul, and some yucky, poisonous something comes out of my mouth, that's not what I really representing my actual soul when I'm in my better space. I don't want to do that. This is that catching it, right? This is that catching it we want to do. And so I want to ask you two things. So one is, tell me an act of self-love you've either recently undertaken. Share it with us. We can celebrate you. That's number one. I love celebrating people. Two, is there an act of self-love you wished you could step into that's a challenge from any of the lists that I just read off? And I'll read it one more time in a second. And or is there a part of the shadow self that you're carrying around that you know is a block? And if you're not willing to share it, you don't have to. If you're willing to be really transparent, honest, and vulnerable, I know that can be challenging for us. If you want to drop that in there, what can you kind of bump into that you know is part of the shadow self? It's like, oof, that's not when I'm being my best. I'm not at my best when blank, 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 blank. Okay. Those are the parts of yourself that I really want you to start looking at. That's really super powerful. And again, it's powerful for self-awareness, and self-awareness is clarity. Clarity is queen. So you just watch me make this mathematical equation, right? So I want you to step into that. So acts of self-love, right? I said saying no, saying yes, setting boundaries, knowing your worth, taking time for rest and vacation, super powerful, honoring your story, having a vision for yourself and sharing it with people around you who hold space, your yes people, your yes and no people. And then also trusting that inner knowing, trusting that the inner ears, that listening skill that we can have to go inward and kind of go, okay, is this for me? Is this not for me? How does this feel to me? We want you to have all of those actions in a toolbox handy to think about, how do I want to show up to really honor my journey, to see my worth, and to set the limits around me that say, this is what I'm willing to endure. These are the lines in the sand that I draw. And so they're very indicative of boundaries. And so I really felt like that was something I wanted to convey, because I see so many women who really struggle with self-care. They really struggle with acts of self-love that are really like action oriented. Like again, they could take a bubble bath, they could take a hike, they could like do a face mask. Like that's great. But I'm really getting at the much bigger leaps that take a lot of bravery. They're like signs of courage for us. Like, hey, that's not for me. Hey, I really appreciate the option, but that's not something that fits with me right now. Oh, hey, actually, I don't like when you speak to me that way. Oh, hey, I'm going to request this thing that even though it makes me nervous, I'm going to ask because it's in my heart. Those acts of self-love. And so I really want you to get your head around action, 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 right? Action. What action am I taking to love myself, to trust myself, to step into my worth? Action items. So please, please, please post in the comments, what is an act of self-love that you've recently undertaken? Because I want to celebrate you. What is one that you wish you could take? So maybe you've taken one, I'm sure you have, but if you haven't, what's one you wish you could take? And then I would love to hear from you about, are there parts of you that feel really triggered that get kind of stuck? And you don't have to tell a whole big story. You don't have to be really vulnerable that way. If you just want to say, yep, a shadow part of myself is, I get really triggered when I feel cornered. I get kind of pity. I get self-pity. I have self-pity when I'm feeling blank, blank, blank. Every one of us has them. So I'm telling you right now, I have them, you have them, you have them, we all have them. So there is no one person walking on the planet that does not have these shadowy parts of ourselves. And they're just the spots that maybe we got hurt. There was a trauma. I mean, I could sit and list, right? And I think you understand where I'm coming from. But that shadow part's really important because it's so deeply connected to self-awareness. Self-awareness leads to clarity. Clarity is queen. So you're going to hear me say it over and over and over again. Okay. So those are the things I would love for you to comment below. Let us celebrate you if you're knocking it out of the park. Let us celebrate you and hold space, because I would love, love, love to hear that and share that with other people, right? Inspire other women. When you share what you're doing, the work that you're working in, you inspire other women. That's what we want to do. So, right, sharing in the comments is, I mean, it's for me, but it's actually for the community. So like, we want other women to see and get ideas about how other women are living into this space, right? How you're leaning in. And so I would love for you to comment below. Okay. For today, as we close, you heard me earlier mentioning that I have a membership that's new, but the other thing that I have that I'm really excited about on iTunes is I just launched a podcast. So I just recorded my very first podcast of all time. I'm super excited. I'm going to spend like 2 minutes talking about what that's about, but I would love for you to go to iTunes and find it. I'm going to try to maybe upload it onto Spotify. I got to figure out how to do that. So I'm trying to either my website, either I'll host it on my website as well, or I'll find another avenue, because I do have people that have don't have Apple, and then they're like kind of stuck. So I'm like, oh, I'm already hearing requests. So I've got to figure that out. The podcast, the first one's Create Your Own Wave. It's just me. Just kicking it off. My hope is to have at least one guest a month, possibly two. I'm going to try to put out a podcast 2 times a month. Okay. So for right now, I've got to like just build steam, because I've got 9 million irons in the fire. What I'm so excited about is this. The podcast is really other women's stories. It's me bringing guests in that are willing to talk about the bravery that it took to step into owning their purpose, how they did their journey to rise, so that you can hear the grit of it. One of the things I'm really passionate about is I think it can be really easy to look at people who are successful and say, that was easy for them. They just got lucky. And so what I really want to do is highlight the journey of really brave and powerful women who have paved and are blazing incredible trails to inspire and motivate you to understand what goes on behind the scenes. I'm a big behind the scenes fan. I'm such a transparency fan. I really believe that when we're vulnerable and we show up in their truth, that people take so much more away than the things that look perfect, because perfection's a lie. Okay. And so I know so many brilliant women. I literally have a list in my head that's like 100 women long, because I just know they have incredible stories to share. So I really hope you'll go find me on iTunes if that's available to you. I will find another way. It's called Rise for Purpose Podcast. And you can find me right on iTunes. Like I said, scroll there. I'll look around and figure out another method. If anybody has got a suggestion for another method, please pop that in the comments. I would be super grateful. I'm like, I don't know where else to put it so that everyone can listen to it. But I will be having at least one guest a month to really share her story. If for some reason something happens, you might get 2 of me chatting, but this first one really felt like fire to me, because it was something in my heart. I was getting ready, and I all of a sudden just like thought of like, people need to know how to create their own wave. And it's something I've done in my career. And so it's something that I really want to inspire other women to do. And so please go check that out if you can. I would love for you to subscribe and follow, like, and rate, please, because those are big things for algorithms. Because right now, I joked yesterday, I asked a beautiful population of really powerful women, I'm like, would anybody go and follow just to kind of help my algorithm? Because right now I'm like, you scroll and I'm like down in like the 35,000th floor in Hades. And so of the iTunes world. And so it would be nice if I could not be 14 pages below the ground surface. I don't need to be number 1 necessarily, right? But boy, it sure would be great. But certainly moving up to where I'm not like way back in the back 40 would be amazing. And so if you would do that, I would be super grateful. But I would love to have you take a listen and subscribe and follow along. And so if that's something that empowers you, that it would be nice to hear. Stories are literally so important to me. My story is important to me. I've listened to stories for over 20 years, right? That is my specialty. And so to me, learning and hearing resilience and power and strength that comes from women and how we reinvent ourselves all the time, that's the meaning of the lotus. There is no accident in why I am designing this podcast to come across the way that it is. And I cannot wait to bring these stories to you. I will guarantee you will walk away inspired, motivated. I will not promise you will not cry. I will not promise you won't laugh till tears run down your face. I'm going to guarantee you that I'm going to be bringing authentic women that are going to bring their fire and share their story that's going to be so empowering. And I want you to walk away with a new lens, some new inspiration, and knowing that behind the scenes of things is so much work sometimes so much trauma, and that there is so much beauty on the flip side of that. And that's really what I want to inspire. It's honestly, it's part of my mission. So, I mean, that's definitely one of my platform missions in this lifetime, is to make sure that you're really inspired and know what it's like to have to work through the tough stuff, that we can do hard things and show up in a really brilliant way. And so I hope you'll go check that podcast out. That would be awesome. If you've ever want to ask questions about any other parts of my services, that's great. You can always find me on my website at laughinglotuswellness.com for any more detail. That's always a great spot to go drop into and check out. So I just want to say thank you so much for jumping in here with me today. I'm so grateful. Please, again, comment below. I can't wait to hear about your brave acts of self-love. Share them in the community. Let us celebrate you. We want to cheers you. We want to tell you that you're doing great. We want to keep you going. Please continue to listen for more inspiration and insight, and kind of the tips and tools for how you might step into this just a little bit more fully. And again, always, as always, feel free to reach out, ask questions, and ask for certain content, because that's really fun to me. I love that kind of stuff. So we'll be back here next Thursday. As always, my friends, look forward to other podcasts coming out here in just a little bit. And until then, this is me sending you blessings, love, and light, supporting you to rise on your path to purpose. And we will see you all next time.